and welcome back to At the Power Table podcast, where we are bringing you the people breaking barriers and building the future. It is almost bank holiday weekend, and we couldn't leave you without a fresh episode to listen to, especially since the last episode links so well to this one. In our last conversation, we spoke to Sina, who taught us about what a microcosm is, or mostly taught me what a microcosm is, and then also shared a outside-in perspective. In this episode, we are speaking to Yujia, founder of the Climate Circle and leading career and leadership coach, who shares an inside out perspective. Yujia and I met at the Young Energy Professionals Awards. We sat across from each other on the table, didn't really speak much at the event, but after the event, she reached out and we connected. Yujia and I, in the conversation, reflect on her journey in the energy industry, what is missing, and where some of the opportunities lie. I hope you enjoy.
Welcome to At the Power Table podcast. Today we are joined by Yujia, who has an incredible career in the energy space and has moved energy adjacent to the climate space. But I'm not going to take away the privilege of telling her story. Yujia, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Just reflecting, the last episode that we had a consultant, Sina, speak about the energy space and value chain. And he shared an outside-in perspective because he worked on the outside of the energy space, but not in industry. And then today we have yourself, who is sharing an inside-out perspective. So really excited and really, really exciting. Oh my God, the vocabulary I have is very limited. Apparently it's just excited and exciting and interesting. What is my other favorite word? Anyway, the point is that I'm really excited to have you today and to be covering that perspective. So, Yujia, would you mind telling us about your career and all the different roles you've had across the energy space?
Yeah, I'll try to condense that into a short amount of time. So I studied physics at university, and towards the end of that, I really wanted to work on something that's impactful, that's real in the world. And I first came across the concept of both peak oil, which was a term used at the time, no one says anymore, and then climate change. And I thought this was such a meaningful course for me to apply my problem-solving analytical skills from the physics degree. So I went to do a master's in renewable energy. It's called Sustainable Energy Futures from Imperial College. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a job in renewable energy. I had only one job offer within the time I needed to secure the job to stay in the country. So I went to work for an oil and gas company. And I was there for about 2 years before they were acquired by Shell. And about a year later, Shell set up a renewables business, and I really felt like this was my chance to actually move across to do something I've always wanted to do. And my journey in that space started in distributed energy. So Shell set up a team to focus on growing local energy solutions. That could be batteries, energy efficiency, home energy assets, and to really help go beyond the renewables revolution to further really decarbonize at a local level. So I worked on building those business solutions for a number of years. Then very much felt like, like a lot of people are feeling, so much of it is in the policy and regulation space in terms of unlocking investment at scale. So I thought the best place to do that was actually in policymaking. So that's when I decided to go to Ofgem. And I worked on, at the time, was a confidential project on market redesign, which later on turned into REMA, which is one of the biggest programs we have in the electricity market design space. And after a year on that project, actually learned a lot about how policymaking works. I then moved to National Grid ESO to help set up a team called Distributed Flexibility Strategy, and that's all about facilitating the integration of local flexibility into national grid services and working alongside government to really create this cohesive environment for those projects to really grow at scale. And my last role in the sector was back out in the private sector, working at an energy platform company, looking at similar solutions on a global scale. That was my career within the energy sector, but I've been stepping away from that since last year and focusing more on supporting people in the climate space in general to really build their careers, because I've worked really around so many roles and different types of organizations. I felt like actually the best way for me to make an impact is to support other people to really thrive and make bigger contributions in their roles rather than me directly working on them. So that's what I've been doing since last year.
Yeah, that's fascinating, and so many points to touch on in terms of your role in the energy industry and then what you're doing now. But just still sticking on to the role in the energy industry, it's many different operating environments. So you're looking at private sector versus public sector, regulated versus non-regulated, and then from a strategic perspective, looking at products, looking at trading, etc. So I can imagine that required you, as you switch through those different roles, a great deal of resilience to navigate that change. I wonder if you reflect, what would you say were your one or two key learnings from the energy sector?
Yeah, I probably didn't realize that I've had such a diverse career in the energy sector. The motivation for me was always to look for another role where I could make a bigger impact, and that tends to be at a different type of organization. I felt like when I was in the private sector, I wanted to be in policymaking, where that's the driver of change. And when I was in the public sector, I started to see actually innovation happening at a much quicker scale in the private sector. So I also wanted to step out of that. And perhaps the lesson that I want to share around that would be to really not narrow yourself down too early in your career. I was very much kind of forced to take on that path early on because I didn't get into a renewables business straight away, and I was on a graduate program which made me move every 8 months, which wasn't actually something I wanted to do because I felt comfortable in my first job. I didn't want to go and learn something new again so quickly. But because of that experience, I really felt like I learned the benefits of constantly learning something new. As soon as you feel like the learning curve is slowing down, it's important time to start set yourself a new challenge, whether that's because that's what the graduate program requires, or later on I felt like that was a really good way to really expand my skill set and my understanding. And no matter how much you think about what you might enjoy in your career, so much of it was gained through practice, through actually going do something and learning that actually I really enjoy something I didn't expect, or I've been thinking so much about getting this job, but I actually don't enjoy the day-to-day of that. So I think a big part of that is having variety, and being a generalist in the sector is so important now because it's changing so quickly. With technology advancing, expertise in one particular area might feel like it's not secure for you to really specialize in that, and the level of adaptability that you gain from trying different things and learning different skills will really set you up for a more resilient career in the future.
Yeah, I love that. That is a brilliant response. The sense I'm getting, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're the type of person who's applied your growth mindset to your career. So the moment there feels like there's some stagnation or there's no growth, you're reassessing and being like, okay, what is the next step? Your decisions feel very purpose-driven. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say since studying towards that master's in university, I have dedicated my career to solving climate change. That was always the motivation. And the reason I picked energy as a subsection of that was because energy represents such a big part of global emissions, which is, again, the reason why a lot of people move into the energy sector, because we want to stop climate change. We want to make a positive impact in this space. And as part of that, given how much, how urgent the issue is, I always wanted to understand whether I'm making the biggest impact with what I can do. Am I making the most of my skill set? Is there somewhere else that I can deliver a bigger change? So that led to me constantly essentially optimizing my career in order to find something that both would give me more skills for me to be a better contributor, but also hopefully in a role where I can make a bigger impact in the short term.
That is beautiful. And I guess just moving then into the climate circle, that's probably allowed you the greatest opportunity to merge that passion, to merge your skills and experiences. Mm-hmm. Talk to us about the climate circles.
I think if I told myself 10 years ago I was going to set up the climate circle, I would not believe it, because coming from a physics background, I was a real kind of analytical person. I wasn't interested in networking, building relationships. I hated jobs that involved making phone calls. I just wanted to work with my spreadsheet all day. That was the beginning of my career. And but throughout my career, I really learned the benefits of having a network. I was fortunate of that because I worked at big organizations where people actually moved around a lot. I ended up developing a network that was naturally big because people went on to do other things. Everyone stayed in the same organization. And I found that there were a lot a lot of people in my career that really supported me throughout my journey, represented, either role models or kind of ideas in terms of different things I could do with my career. And I really began to value that later on, and particularly valuing genuine relationships, which I think is a lot of times missing in a lot of networking events. And sometimes they feel really corporate. It feels like you're there to represent your company. You're not really yourself. And that was really the motivation of me setting up the Climate Circle, which is a community for women who are passionate about climate change, that work in the climate change space. We run in-person events roughly on a monthly basis that really focus on building authentic relationships. It's a safe space for people to be themselves, to really share their experience of working in the sector as women particularly, and to really be able to let the guards down and talk about both their passions, ambitions, but also the challenges of working in the sector that is still very male-dominated in the energy space. I still feel like a lot of times when we go to conferences, it still looks very different from, maybe what we would like it to be. Within the Climate Circle, at least there's a space that you can go to on a monthly basis to meet someone and have conversations that maybe you will not be able to have elsewhere.
That is awesome. And I'm very interested. You say that authentic relationship building, and that's what sets the Climate Circle apart. Mm-hmm. How do you build that? How do you enable that?
Yeah, I really think that is something that's really central to the community. That's really one of the strongest values. And that's because I personally benefited a lot from genuine friendships in the sector, as well as meeting people that I became friends with who happened to work in the sector, and we actually spent so much time talking about what it's like to be working in the sector, to be really bearing the weight of such a challenge that we're facing as society, and how do you balance the stress of solving a really important, urgent issue, and also, your own well-being, your own mental health. So I think a big part of that is setting the scene for that. That is a strong value, and that's something I talk about regularly. It's something I share in terms of my challenges and the lessons I've learned. And another part of that is I describe the Climate Circle events as introvert friendly, because I'm a big introvert. I really struggle with going to networking events. Go into a room, if I see a sea of people, I just don't know where to start. And it's gotten better over the years, but I'm not quite there. And what I do very intentionally is to make sure everyone that walks through the door of our events really feel seen and feel welcome immediately. And I will go and say hi to everyone. And I probably have messaged you before the event. I know a little bit about you, and I will immediately, either introduce you to someone that I think you could be interested in talking to, or at some of our events, offer some icebreakers, some prompts to help people have conversations. It's just a conversation starter rather than kind of, the usual introductions to help people get into a deeper conversation. At some of our events, we have semi-structured, we call it a semi-structured event where we will have a theme for people to talk about. Again, there is a conversation starter there, and we'll organize for maybe a few people to share their career stories. And the theme there is also around sharing genuine stories, without filters, all the ups and downs of that. So there are various things I do to kind of really prompt people to really be open and feel like it's a space that they can be themselves, other people sharing similar things. And of course, also making sure the space feels safe and welcoming. That environment is encouraged.
That is beautiful. It's a core value, and it's intertwined into everything that you do. I wonder, from your perspective, having worked in the energy space, have you seen those spaces? Do they exist? Over time, are they beginning to exist a lot more, or do they still not exist and it's a gap?
I think the reason I set up was that I really struggled to find it. I really wanted to find a community like that. I went to a lot of different networking events. Always felt like something was missing for me. One of the key differentiator is we often hold events at yoga studios, just because immediately you walk into the space, you already feel relaxed and welcoming. It's a non-corporate environment. And I think that is missing. I do think there's a movement to people being more authentic at work, kind of bring their true self and their values and talk about their passions a lot more. But I do think there's a long way to go before we kind of fully accept that in the sector, kind of integrating that professional serious with how people are and who they really are. Yeah.
And I think just in terms of fixing those missing puzzles from a networking perspective, I'm very keen to get your perspective on skills. So the podcast was start up from a perspective of there's a skills gap in the energy industry, but there's also really cool people in the industry like yourself and multiple others and all the previous guests. I know you've been across multiple roles. Very keen to get your perspective in terms of how has that skills gap changed? If it has changed, what do you see? What have you seen back then? And then obviously from now, your interactions with energy people in the industry from the climate circle perspective, what is the trends you're seeing, if any?
I think the key trend I'm seeing is probably more about integration and collaboration across sectors. I would say when I first started in the sector, even the way that I struggled to find my first job, because I've always been a generalist deep down, but I didn't know where to put myself coming from a physics background with a master's in renewable energy. But I wasn't an engineer, I wasn't an economist, I couldn't find jobs that's right for me. I think it's changed a lot since, this was 15 years ago. And we really value skills from other sectors. And we really see that there are to solve the problem we have at hand, it's not just an engineering problem, it's not just an economics problem, it's about product design, it's about consumer behaviors, it's really about integrating everything. Also because the energy sector is growing beyond just about electricity and gas, it's going to transport, industry, so we are constantly integrating other sectors into the energy sector and therefore needing to understand how they work and what are the skill set that's relevant for those sectors. One of the key ones I think is missing, perhaps also in the energy sector, is communication. Because it's such a technical industry, we sometimes live in a bubble of everyone understanding the technical terms and understanding engineering concepts. But actually, it's more important to be able to communicate complex concepts to other people, to be able to upskill people that are moving into the sector very quickly and find a space for them to make a contribution. And also being able to step outside the energy sector and learn from other sectors. I recently went on a webinar that was really interesting, which was about how the alternative protein sector is learning from the EV industry. And I realized, wow, the EV industry is new anyway, but we're already sharing that with other sectors. What are we not learning from some way established sectors?
Yeah, that's a very fair point, especially on the communications, and love to get your perspectives, just diving deeper into that. When you say communications, are you talking of from a consumer buy-in perspective and just explaining specific concepts? Have you come across any concepts that you feel like we just aren't properly explaining?
I think energy engagement is challenging. I think the way people understand energy and purpose, how it works, and there's quite a challenge between perception and reality. And one of the concepts that anyone in the energy sector is familiar with is going forward, the value of energy isn't so much about the unit of energy, but more about when it's produced. Sometimes it's extremely valuable, other times the price is negative. How do you really get consumers to understand that when they're more used to saving energy means saving money? And if using more energy means you are damaging the environment, that's just one example. But there are also so many changes that we need consumers to accept. EV is one of them that's happening really quickly. The decarbonization of heating is underway. That's been a very challenging sector for the last 10 years. That's something I've worked on for a long time. How do we get people to really see the role of that in climate change? But at the same time, how do we make sure we design a solution that people accept? That's not just an engineering solution. It's something people want to have in their homes as well.
Yeah, I agree with all of those points. I definitely think it's a reiteration of what is important and communicating that in a way that's easily understandable. I think maybe if the question around, if it was the two of us setting up a company to figure out this communications problem, what kind of departments would we have, or what would that key product service offering be in terms of communications?
Yeah, I really think there's something missing about almost like a simple guide of consumers to engage with energy. I think there are a lot of people that want to help. There are a lot of people that actually do a lot around their house to save energy or sign up for specific kind of tariffs. But it's almost difficult for people to understand their behaviors and the actual impact. They might be doing lots of things, switching lights off, but the impact might be really small because of how efficient lighting is now. And they might not think about heating. Actually, that has a huge impact on their carbon footprint. I really, I don't know why no one has really cracked this problem, because I've been in the home energy space for a long time. Something that's really easy to understand for consumers, that's fun to look at, that also make people feel engaged in terms of carbon saving or the kind of the impact they're having. Yeah, I would quite like to see someone really disrupting that.
Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, in a very ideation space today, it's almost like a cartoon or some sort of like a program that people like get really into, and that's how you learn the different tricks and different ways.
Yeah.
So definitely an opportunity there for someone to come and take
Absolutely.
it. I guess just still staying on that skills perspective. Obviously, as we move into EVs and heat pumps, etc., what you think the skills are that we need in order from an energy transition perspective?
The answer I'm going to give is probably kind of maybe a step back from that. Ultimately, I think what we need more for the energy transition is leadership. And when I say leadership, I don't necessarily mean people with certain job titles at different, organizations. It's not necessarily about kind of the power they hold, but an attitude generally for anyone in the sector to have. To me, really genuine leadership in the energy transition, in the climate transition, is about taking actions that are values-based and taking actions that are courageous, are difficult to take at times. I think particularly this year, we're under some kind of difficult circumstances politically, and we're seeing organizations rolling back in terms of their targets, countries rolling back in terms of their commitment. And it's a real time to really test leadership at organizations, countries level, and in the individual level, because we all have choices that we make for our careers, for decisions we make at work, that are more aligned with the mission behind the energy transition. I think it's at this time, it's a real test of that, and it's important that people come forward and take committed actions that's really rooted in why we set up these businesses, why we set up these targets. I think that it's something that maybe we don't talk about as much compared to the hard skills, because again, it's a technical sector. But in a time where technology is moving on quickly, we have AI with all the information. The really important thing left for individuals to solve is really around, motivation, around collaboration, around taking the right actions. So yeah, I really hope people and organizations can focus on that more. Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know where to start. There's so many things to pick on and so many different routes to go on. I completely agree in terms of the leadership comment, and in terms of there is a need for the softer skills, especially in the operating context that we're in. And then also in terms of from a understanding that leadership, and then also that leadership translating into how we bring people along on the journey. And it goes back to what we were speaking about, making it really easy and accessible for a person who isn't technically inclined or isn't technically working on that, and then linking that back to the political context. I mean, I'm sure you've seen, again, like you referred to, the pulling back of on certain of the claims or pushing out some of the things. It's also the argument around not having certain infrastructure because it has poor visual impacts in different communities, or community opposition or resistance to certain things. And yeah, I strongly believe that comes down to a portion of not understanding what the energy transition is, what is the benefit for you, and how will this support you, especially given that there is, from a consumer perspective, rising energy bills, but then there's also a need to decarbonize, and in order to decarbonize, we need new infrastructure, so it needs to be developed. So it's almost that balance, and I guess it's always a balance of multiple things, right? Multiple opposing things, the balance of technical skills versus soft skills. It's the balance of how do we build new infrastructure but make sure we maintain value for consumers. If you were that leader, the ultimate leader in the energy space, with no restrictions, so no money restrictions, no policy restrictions, and you were redesigning the UK electricity energy space, broaden it to climate if you want to as well. What would be the changes you would make?
Well, that's a good question, especially because I worked on market redesign for such a long time. That's something we thought about very deeply. I'm going to give you two answers. One is not answering the question. The other one is let's answer the question. Sometimes feel like we potentially kind of fall into this trap of what's the right solution for climate or for the energy system. And in terms of almost academically, which is the most efficient way. But the reality is we have a running, breathing energy system. That's what it is now. And we have projects underway and we have an investment ecosystem that is based on how things work now. I think that the question I'm more interested in is what are the right changes and adaptation we can make, whether that's step change or incremental change. That's most likely going to take us to where we need to go, and that's most flexible, practical, that works with the environment, that is resistant to potential changes and innovation that's happening along the way. So really optimizing the probability of us succeeding, not necessarily which is the right answer. That's kind of me not answering the question, but if I were to answer the question, let's redesign from the beginning. Again, someone who's worked in the heating space for a while as part of my career, I would say it's about completely replacing the gas heating system with a renewable electric one. Going to cut our emissions by a huge amount very quickly, and that makes it a lot easier to then focus on other harder to abate industries. The heating space is something that's been really challenging to decarbonize.
Yeah, and I guess we are making progress in terms of gas and moving to heat pumps, etc. Yeah. So good progress, but still more progress required. And I love the reframing of that question in terms of there is no academic answer, there is no perfect answer, because like you say, there is a living, breathing energy system, and it's about adaptability and building resilience. That is really, really powerful. So thank you for sharing that. I think just in terms of from an energy perspective, we've spoken about your roles in energy, the different work you've done, the climate space, and building communities, and the leadership that we need, what we need to disseminate that information and bring people along with us on the journey. Perfect segue. You're a career and leadership coach as well, supporting those on the front line. So not only are you providing networking opportunities, but you're also holding their hands and taking people through. Tell us about that, please.
Yeah, so I've transitioned to career and leadership coaching since last October. I can't believe it's been 6 months since I've been doing this. A career path actually I've been thinking about for a while. I thought I'd be doing it a lot later. I have always been really interested in the people side of the energy challenge and the climate challenge. I've always enjoyed leading people and mentoring and building communities within organizations. So that's something I've been thinking about for a while. I think more than ever, because of how urgent the challenge is, I really felt like, even from a personal angle, I needed to make a step change rather than incremental changes with my career. And I thought about what would be the best way for me to make an impact quickly. How do I leverage my impact? How do I scale my impact quickly? And I came to the conclusion that the best thing for me to do is to actually support people who are working at the frontline, people who are like myself, before when I was in the career, to really drive the type of changes they would like to make in the sector, to really grow their careers and lead their organizations, or change their own careers to reorientate towards climate. So that's my focus, which is really about helping people who are in the climate space thrive and make a bigger impact, but also looking after themselves along the way, because it's a difficult sector to be working in, because it's so meaningful, it's so challenging. Sometimes it's easy to lose ourselves in it. It's easy to have burnouts, to feel really disappointed when things don't go well. And when things go well, it's amazing. But when things are difficult, I think it's very hard for people to remain in the sector and to ultimately make their best impact. So my work is all about supporting people who are in those positions to really be their best selves.
And that's beautiful. And if someone wanted to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Yeah, so the best thing to do is to go on my website. So it's yujia.com, and you can learn more about how the coaching program works and book a discovery call so we can talk about your career and your interests.
Awesome. We will link that the website in the episode. So if anyone wants to access that, given your breadth and the working experience you do, it would be a crime if I didn't ask you the question. If there was someone interested in the energy space, interested in the climate space, has a passion for it, but doesn't know where to start, what would your advice be?
Similar question when I went to a careers event at Imperial recently. I would give kind of probably similar answers to both people who are maybe just finishing university, looking for their first job, as well as those that have established career elsewhere but want to transition that into climate. I think there are so many transferable skills that we need in the energy industry, in climate, because every organization needs, accountants, they need communications officers, they need product designers. It's not just about climate or energy specific understanding. So first of all, recognizing that you have a lot to offer, whatever that your background is. And then I would recommend people to really show something that they're doing to support the sector, whether it's a course that they're signing up because they're interested in learning about the space, or any kind of project that could be a blog, a podcast, a community they're running, an online course. There are so many things that people can start now. There's so many ways for people to start projects and share that online. That really is a great way to learn, to grow, and to demonstrate your commitment in the sector. So if you combine that with your ability to really communicate what you offer to the potential employer, even though you don't have the background in the sector, I think that will set you up for success in finding a job in the space.
Awesome. And I have one final question, but before I ask it, I just want to give you space to share any advice or anything you wanted to talk about in the podcast that I may have not asked you.
Oh, good question. And I think one of the key things that I probably have talked about, but I would like to reiterate, is the importance of collaboration. As someone that's worked at so many different organizations, I really saw so much of our sector is still siloed, and people sometimes have an impression of, if you are in the public sector, this is what you're like, or if people in the private sector, this is what they're like. But the reality is everyone is different, and there's so much commonality among people working in the space. And we are fortunate to work in the sector that's growing. So competition is less of an issue compared to maybe some other sectors. And I would really encourage people to really see the value of collaboration and sharing knowledge and being curious about other people and their background and what they're working on. I think it's really through that we come up with innovative solutions to solve the problem we have compared to what we've been doing in the past. So yeah, that's the main message I want to communicate.
I love it. And then final question, if you were given advice to Yujia starting her career, what would that advice be?
Would say that I would probably just tell her to relax. This is my 12th year of working in the sector. The beginning of my first job was still the hardest part of my entire career. I really have so much respect for anyone that's out there looking for their first job. It just gets better from there, and it's really easy to diminish what we offer because we don't have work experience, or you feel like what you're offering, your ideas are not as established. But the advice I would give her is to have confidence and relax and really share her idea and express her thoughts more, because I really truly believe everyone in our sector has something to offer. It no longer is a space which is purely based on expertise and experience and years of experience, because things are changing so quickly. If anything, people fresh out of university have the latest information about technologies, and there's always something we can learn from everyone, no matter their experience and background. So that's my tip.
That is brilliant advice. And thank you so much for all of the insights you shared across this episode. I'm definitely going to reflect on that business idea and then some very powerful insights in terms of the leadership and the skills and the soft skills we need from an industry perspective. Yujia, thank you so very much for your time. This has been great.
Thank you for having me.
What a treat of a conversation. I will definitely be reflecting on the softer skills and what that means for the industry as a whole. If there's anything in the episode that stands out for you, we would love to hear about it. Find us on LinkedIn and Instagram, and excitingly, now on YouTube too. Please like, subscribe, follow, and most importantly, comment too. We really, really want to hear from you. For our next episode, I am excitingly in my hometown, Johannesburg, South Africa, soaking up much needed family time, sun, but also chatting to Adila Mayat, project developer at an independent power producer.
The concept of an independent power producer is not necessarily unique to South Africa,
but has a unique South African twist to it, which I think is definitely something most markets can learn from. It's such a goodie. I cannot wait for you to listen to it. Thank you again for joining us on this journey. It truly is a pleasure, and I hope it is as exciting for you as it is for me. Have a great bank holiday weekend. Bye.